World Championships in MotoGP with Yamaha, so he does bring a lot of experience to the table in the Franco Morbidelli camp. I think a lot of people might have thought that Ramon Furcado was going to be moving over with Frankie for 2022, but not so. So Paolo Ciabatti there, you saw the Ducati Corsa sporting director keeping a close eye on this practice start session. The first man to launch away off the line is KTM rider Miguel Oliveira. KTM showing a really good sign of promise today with Brad Binder at the top of the timesheets for so long. Andrea Dovizioso, well, every second will be valuable for him on that improving 2022 Wise Diamond. Of course, he is going to get the same level of support as both Fabio Quartararo and Franco Morbidelli. And thankfully, Lewis, there we just saw a clean getaway for Fabio after the dramas of yesterday.
Absolutely, a much welcome practice start for Fabio Quartararo. The key word being practice, so I think he'll be glad to get those gremlins out of the way. He won't want to make a start like that in Qatar, so clearly steps forward made. And yeah, I think what he probably learned from yesterday, and we're seeing this with all the riders, none of them are parking over to the left-hand side, the rider's left, and pulling into all the dirty dust and sand and mud that's been blown on the track up against the pit wall. They're all very keen to stay on the racing line this time.
You can see there Andrea Dovizioso, obviously late on in that session, was running quite a light fuel load, maybe in time attack mode, but he's just getting a little bit of a splash and dash to make sure he can get round this 4.3 kilometre Mandalika circuit for the practice start session. So the pit wall is pretty busy over there in Indonesia right now. There are the Pramac Ducati team, the factory Ducati Lenovo team as well, keeping a very close eye on what's happening out on circuit. Just pick up there in the background, that's of course Marc Marquez flanked by Darren Binder. Excellent second day for Marc Marquez. He was never going to be taking big risks coming back from so many significant injuries over the last couple of years. The 8 times world champion played it safe like so many did on those tricky conditions on day one, but he was much more to the fore today. Marc Marquez, second behind Luca Marini on the timesheets, and that new Honda launching away pretty well, Lewis, by the looks of it.
It is, and Marc Marquez, I think he knows full well that the points aren't handed out until the March the 6th in Qatar. So as you say, there was no real value, I suppose, for Marc Marquez to push the boat out too much. He more than anyone else, it's got to be in the back of his mind. I think you can only be human if it's in the back of your mind what's happened to him over the winter with the double vision that he suffered as a result of that training crash just before the Algarve Grand Prix at the end of last season. So when conditions are particularly sketchy and grip is particularly low, you can imagine Marc Marquez just wanting to leave a little bit of margin in his back pocket. And now with conditions picking up, he's decided to pick the pace up, and he's clearly looking in pretty good shape, and it's probably the best we've seen from this new Honda so far. I know Pol Espargaro was fastest yesterday, but I think conditions meant we could really scrap those lap times from yesterday. We're seeing a more representative picture today with lap times much closer to what we're expecting, and Marc Marquez is right in the mix.
Yeah, pretty good workout today for Marquez, both mind and body. He did 74 laps, which is a fair old shift out of that Mandalika circuit as a bunch of riders. Pol Espargaro there, that was a superb launch away on that new radical Honda RC213V. Not such a clean getaway yet again by Taka Nakagami. There's a few times last year where Nakagami seemed to struggle with the launch control and getting that satellite Honda off the line. Alex Rins, his crew chief there, Juan Casso.
It's quite a long run actually to the first corner here. As you can see, you pretty much see the exit to the final corner in the background here, and it is going to be a particularly key part of the Grand Prix when the first Indonesian Grand Prix for a quarter of a century takes place next month. It's a 507-metre main straight, but the grid is pretty much at the beginning of it. It's right at the beginning of the main straight, so it's a fairly long run down to the first corner. So yeah, if you are poorly off the line, you're just going to get swallowed up in pretty short order. It's not as if you can just jump straight on the brakes and banzai into turn one. You will get swallowed up. So it is key that if you are anywhere sensible on the grid here, you do get that start right, because you could ruin your race on lap one.
So what you're saying, Lewis, is we could have 5 or 6 Ducatis in the top 5 or 6 positions on lap one in Mandalika.
There's every chance. We saw it as the people who remember the very first image of the 2021 season. We just saw a Ducati benefit, didn't we, into turn one as Jorge Martin came steaming through the field. As Marc Marquez does what Fabio Quartararo did yesterday, and you can see a graphic demonstration there of the dust and dirt off the line. Marc Marquez kicking up plumes of dust as he headed off the line, not in the direction that he started.
Well, we know Marc Marquez loves a bit of dirt tracking when he's back home in Europe. Well, that was pretty spectacular, and not in a good way for Marc Marquez. Yeah, you can just see how dirty that left-hand side of the grid is there. They're going to have to get that cleaned up for the race in about pace, Lewis. We know that their bikes are good. They are able to start and launch off the line. Some riders that are on non-Ducatis this year might find the races quite difficult, particularly along because it's a hard bike to overtake as well. They've got good braking performance and stability going into the corner. The engine and the acceleration, their electronic control, their mechanical grip means that they're so good coming off the corner as well. It looks like the most complete package going into the new season, doesn't it, with Ducati?
It does, and we've got 5 2022 Ducatis on the grid across the factory Ducati team, the Pramac Ducati team, and of course Luca Marini within the VR46 squad. So there's 5 of those on the grid, and of course the 2021 bike finished last year as the class of the field. Pecco Bagnaia winning on it 4 times in the closing 5-6 races of the season. So Enea Bastianini in particular will be a real factor in the early stages of the season if anybody is struggling to get their new packages up to speed. Marc Marquez, I think this is take 3 now. His first start went pretty well, his second far from it, so we'll see if he's nailed it on the third one. But yeah, as you say, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility to have 5 or 6 Ducatis starting in the front 2 rows of the grid when we go to Qatar, as Marc Marquez gets it much more settled that time, and more to the point, he went directly straight ahead off the line rather than hard left. But yeah, as you say, Ducati, what Ducati crave in a Grand Prix and what the others fear is when Ducati have track position in a Grand Prix, because they are just so hard to shift from the front of the field. How many times do we see it, particularly in Qatar? We saw it last year as the Yamahas and Suzukis were trying to fight their way through. They'd get past Ducatis and then just be blitzed on the start-finish straight by a series of them, particularly Zarco last year had an incredible top speed, set a new record, didn't he, in the top speed charts last year in Qatar. So yeah, the Ducatis, once they have track position, are so difficult to shift, and that's the target that the other teams are going to have to try and aim for, to try and get ahead of them on the grid and stay there.
Yeah, and the key for Ducati in 2022, of course, they have strength in numbers in terms of the machinery, and they certainly have strength in numbers in terms of their talent. Pecco Bagnaia and Jack Miller, we'll talk a little bit more about those guys coming up later in this After the Flag programme. But let's have a quick chat about Pramac Ducati, because it was a good day for Johann Zarco. He got up to 6th late on with a really strong time attack, 74 laps completed by the Frenchman. He did 96 laps yesterday, so slacking today a bit, wasn't he, Johann Zarco? Jorge Martin in 9th. I think they're going to be pretty content as well, aren't they, Lewis? I mean, clearly in the hands of Luca Marini. Bagnaia and Miller looks like they adopted a pretty risk-free day against them until they're fully confident. But there's no doubt about it. With more time on this GP22, we're starting to see that potential unleashed. Jorge Martin, we know he's so good over a 1 lap. His qualifying record last year was astonishing. We saw it throughout his career in Moto 3 and Moto 2. So those boys, like, they've acclimatised to Mandalika pretty quickly as well.
It seems so, and I think they'll be pretty glad to see the grip levels ramping up. They've been speaking in the first 2 tests that the big issue they've been finding with this 2022 Ducati is that the extra power that it's got is applying it to the road. Simon Crafar spoke earlier on in our midday report, if you listen to that it appears as if they're focusing now and settling on the slightly shorter exhaust. We've had the pretty long exhaust, which has been very difficult to miss, poking out of the back of that Ducati back into Sepang. It looks as if they're going with a shorter exhaust, and that gives them a slightly more smoother delivery of the power when they come out of corners. And yeah, Jorge Martin, he's a fantastic qualifier first and foremost, but he's proven that he's more than just a single lap merchant in MotoGP. The way he managed that victory in Austria with the pressure of the reigning world champion Joan Mir at the time breathing down his neck, he handled it like a veteran and took the victory pretty comfortably there. Had a bit of a crash today, but all in all a pretty solid day for him. He was on target to set the fastest time of the day, but lost some time in the first sector. Marc Marquez perhaps cracking a joke there about the practice start that didn't quite go right.
Yeah, he can find the funny side in it now. I'm sure when he dumped the clutch and had that rear Michelin tyre spin up on him on the grid over there in Mandalika, it would have been a bit hard in the mouth stuff. Here it is then, on the grid, the middle of the grid, isn't he, Marc Marquez? And look at that, wow, that rear tyre lights up, big wheel spin. There's his long-term manager and mentor, former 125cc world champion Emilio Alzamora. If it wasn't heart in mouth for Marc, it's certainly heart in mouth for Emilio. So again, I guess we have to make this point, Lewis, as well. I mean, we talk about how important qualifying is in terms of where you are on the grid for good starts, but looking at these pictures from Mandalika, you are going to be wanting to be on that right-hand side where there's a clean line, because we've seen it 2 or 3 times now. Nakagami yesterday, Quartararo yesterday, Marquez yesterday. They're the ones that we caught on camera. There is big problems launching off the line if you're on a dirty part of the track.
Absolutely. It looks like it'll be more of an advantage to be 4th than 3rd on the grid, won't it? Looking at that, if you're on the inside, the pit wall side of the grid. What we might end up seeing when we go on, we're going to warm up Sunday morning of the Indonesian Grand Prix, we might see riders who are qualified 3rd, 6th, 9th, that sort of place, just going down the inside of this track on their warm-up laps in that morning session to try and clean up their grid slots. That's something we see quite a bit. And of course, there will be a couple of races earlier in the day, Moto 3, Moto 2, to hopefully clean that up. But yeah, it could be a real factor in deciding who wins and loses in Indonesia next month. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we were just talking briefly about Pramac Ducati. We'll stay with the Italian team, of course. An incredible 2021 for them. Jorge Martin was the Rookie of the Year. They were the top independent team in that championship. Johann Zarco was the top independent team rider, of course, for the first half of last season, fought for the world title. Now, there's been a bit of change in upper management in Paolo Campanotti's squad, of course, the departure of Francesco Guidotti over to KTM, but it means that a famous name in motorcycle racing, Fonz Nieto, now takes over a sporting director duty, and let's see what he thinks about the prospects ahead for Pramac Ducati.
For me, especially, it's a different role on the team. Before I was on the track to try to help the guys, but now I try to help on the garage. For sure, it's different. Johan and Jorge wants me on the track, and this is difficult in the beginning, but for sure we have a very strong team. This year we can make too many laps, us and the other teams, and we are not sure at 100% with the new bike. We have to more days to try to find more solutions, but I think we are at 90% for the first race. For sure, it's a very, very long season. For that, they have to stay calm on the beginning, try to get as much points as possible. And for sure, he's one of the top 5 riders. Now with the Ducatis, we have to see what happened, but for sure, he's one of the strongest of the Ducati squad.
So they're the thoughts of new Pramac Ducati sporting director Fonz Nieto of what should be another very strong season coming up for Martin and Zarco. We'll stay with the independent Ducati theme right now, because it was a superb second day in Mandalika for the newly created Mooney VR46 Ducati team. I guess you could say Luca Marini over the Mooney. Had to get that one in quite early, didn't we? After him topping the timesheets on day 2. As we mentioned, Lewis, it was a pretty fragmented start to testing last week in Sepang for him. On day 2, when he had a full day to get going, he did look pretty confident and comfortable. Yesterday, he did say, I can understand already now the clear potential that's in this GP22. Of course, Marini has had the biggest machinery upgrade of anybody on the grid for next year. GP19 he was on last year, up to the GP22. Here is, and the man of the moment over in Mandalika. What do we make of that lap time and the progress that he's making, Lewis? Because it bodes well. His approach will be steady rather than spectacular, Luca Marini. So to be up there immediately like he is, it shows how good he is, how much more experience he's gained from last year, but clearly there's some serious potential in that GP22, as we touched upon.
Absolutely. It's the first real show of potential, I think, isn't it, from that GP22. We've seen the factory boys keep it fairly quiet in pre-season testing so far. Even today, Jack Miller down in 20th and Bagnaia in 10th. So that's the first real show of strength from that GP22. And Luca Marini, it must be interesting, because there's been a bit of talk in pre-season so far about a potential shootout for a factory Ducati seat further down the line between Jorge Martin and Enea Bastianini. Luca Marini's probably sat there on a GP22 at VR46 thinking, don't forget about me, guys, because I fancy a shot at that ride as well. And if he can put in some good rides, particularly early in the season, he might figure in that conversation as well. We've heard a lot, particularly from Lucio Cecchinelli, speaking earlier today in our midday report, that a lot of the decisions regarding contracts for 2023 are going to be made in this first 6 or 7 races of the season. So if Luca Marini can get off to a flyer on that 2022 Ducati, he might figure in their plans somewhere.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make there, isn't it? I mean, when you talk about the future of the Ducati Lenovo team, it's all pointing towards a fairly routine renewal for Pecco Bagnaia. No great surprise there. Already some media reports suggesting that they're in the final throes of discussions there between Ducati management and Pecco. A deal possibly even announced before the first race in Qatar on March the 6th. Why not? Get it out of the way so there's no distractions for him. The media constantly asking him if he's going to be moving teams. But in terms of Bagnaia possible teammates for 2023, you hear the names Miller, you hear Bastianini and Martin, as Lewis just mentioned, but very rare that Luca Marini comes into that conversation. A few more performances, though, like today, and he'll certainly come into the equation. Now, we'll stick with the Ducati theme, the independent Ducati theme, of course, another newly formed team, the Gresini Racing team. What a start they had in 2022 with the brilliant Bastianini beast mode fully engaged over in Sepang last weekend as he topped the timesheets at the opening test. It's been a pretty positive couple of days so far over in Mandalika as well. Bastianini, he'll be taking so much confidence, such a buzz from topping the timesheets last weekend in Malaysia, Lewis, and building on that early potential as well, because he's been right inside that battle for the top 6 yet again.
Absolutely. He's been fast at every stage, hasn't he, so far, in every day of pre-season testing, which can only bode well. We spoke last week about the big hurdle that he needs to get over this season is that qualifying pace, which he was telling us that wasn't so much down to him, it was down to the bike that he had underneath him and its strengths. The GP19 that he was riding on last year, its strengths were much more in terms of saving its tyre towards the end of the race, and the GP21 that he's now on could certainly get them switched on and fired up for a hot lap very, very quickly. And yeah, as you mentioned, Enea Bastianini's been fast at every stage. He's been in the top 7 today, but he was looking quicker than that earlier in the day. He was one of those who got shuffled down with some late time attacks. So yeah, the signs can only be positive for Enea Bastianini. The other side of the garage we'll touch on in a moment. It's been a little bit more tricky, this Indonesia test, for Fabio Di Giannantonio, testing in general, given the illness that he had earlier in the week when we were in Malaysia. But no, all in all, I think Enea Bastianini, whatever happens tomorrow, will go to Qatar thinking he's got a genuine podium shot, I think.
Yeah, and Fabio Di Giannantonio, who Lewis just mentioned there, credit to him because it has been a tough test. A couple of spills, as Lewis also said, but he ended day 2 just 7.5 tenths away from top spot. Brilliant performance. Now, and of course, it's in many respects an emotional season for the Gresini Racing team. Of course, this team existing to honour the late memory of Fausto Gresini, of course, who sadly lost his life about 1 year ago now due to COVID-19. His family are continuing his legacy with the creation of this team. So let's hear the thoughts of their new sporting director, Michele Massini, ahead of a huge 2022 for the Italian team.
Yeah, the focus is to continue to improve our performance, as we did a really good job in Sepang. So today was a positive day for us because we try some different settings for both riders, and they are quite a good pace. And here with the user tire and also Fabio start to understand very well the bikes. So we need to put more kilometer on the tarmac to understand the Ducati. Unfortunately, we don't make a lot of laps this morning, but after the break, we put 50 laps. So it was a lot of kilometers. And for sure he start to understand all the bikes, all the traction, the engine, to understand the feeling. We are here for this, so we are not to take in a part of this game, so we are here to try to arrive on top as possible. And so Enea was quite good. And today, like I said before, we have a really good pace with the tire, so we don't push so much. So we keep the serenity of the first test also in this day.
there yesterday. That interview was filmed over in Mandalika from new Gresini Racing sporting director Michele Massini. We wish, of course, that new team a safe and successful 2022. A couple of exciting young Italians there with Enea Bastianini and Fabio Di Gianantonio. We've got some interviews then coming up very, very shortly, so don't go anywhere. All the reaction coming up from a really exciting day two over in Mandalika. But we'll turn our focus now to another Italian team and an improving factory as well. From Nawali, Aprilia, who did a rather exciting team launch earlier on this week, loving Massimo Rivola conducting the orchestra. Romano Albiciano, the technical director, not quite sure how good he is on the violin, but it looked great for the pictures. And I've got to say that new Aprilia looks absolutely stunning. Beautiful looking motorcycle. Of course, the crucial proof will be, is it competitive? Well, so far so good in 2022. Excellent performance from both Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Viñales last weekend over in Malaysia. Maverick Viñales was third quickest here in Mandalika as well when the boys went over onto the soft tyres late on. The momentum which clearly was built over that extended test in Sepang, Lewis, has been thankfully carried on here. The RSGP, they seem to be able to roll it out the box, and it works now from track to track. And this will be a big confidence boost for Maverick Viñales as well. Third quickest. He's slowly but surely getting his head around what he needs to push that Aprilia to the limit. I think that was an issue last year, certainly on soft tyres. He wasn't quite sure where to push or how hard he could push, but that confidence is coming with experience, and Maverick feels like he'll be in the game around Qatar. And from what we've seen so far here in Indonesia, hard to pick a fight with him on that one.
No, it's definitely not, and it is a positive sign, as you say, for Aprilia. Every box that needs to be ticked so far, they're ticking it. Every circuit they go to, they're fast. Of course, they've only been to a couple so far, but they've been fast from the get-go at both Sepang and Mandalika. Maverick Viñales, his position is probably not as good as it looks, actually. Third fastest, around 3/10 off the pace. But just looking at the times through the course of the days, we were following them as we kept getting the updates coming through. Maverick Viñales is phenomenal in sectors 1, 2, and 3, but he keeps losing a lot of time. I think he's the 18th fastest rider through the 4th sector of the lap, which involves that long, winding right-hander before you then switch back left for the final corner. So Maverick Viñales, if he could have nailed the final sector, might well have troubled Luca Marini's fastest time of the day. So there's certainly still pace to be found for Aprilia. So yeah, Maverick Viñales looking very good with margins still to improve. And Aleix Espargaro's position today, down in 14th, perhaps best to just disregard that. He did have a crash earlier on in the day, which perhaps maybe clouds the picture a bit. I think he's probably better than that time suggests.
Yeah, but everything we've seen so far in 2022, it's all looking good for Aprilia potentially finally breaking that victory duck in the MotoGP World Championship. Of course, famously last August, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, myself and Lewis's home race. That was where Aleix Espargaro took their first podium finish in the modern 4-stroke MotoGP era. So the interviews and reaction coming up live from Mandalika. You can see there now, this is live over in Indonesia. The man of the moment, Luca Marini, just getting ready for some live TV interviews with our Italian colleagues. Of course, they're on the ground just like we are with Jack Appleyard, Simon Crafar and Emilio Vasquez, all the riders now. They've barely had chance to conduct their debriefs with their crews. Pol Espargaro there, just signing a few autographs in the paddock. We can't, as we say, overemphasise just how huge these guys are. They are sporting superstars in this part of the world. They're going to get mobbed when they come out of the hotels. We saw some pictures on the eve of this Mandalika test when Marc Marquez landed in Lombok just a few days ago. There was a big crowd of fans and media waiting to greet the Repsol Honda man. So special moments these. Of course, the Indonesian fans, they've had to be patient. They've had to wait 25 long years to get a taste of MotoGP action on home soil, and they're not wasting any opportunity to catch a few autographs, catch a few pictures with the current modern-day superstars of MotoGP. Great to see this, Lewis.
It is, yeah, as mentioned earlier on, the fans really do live and breathe MotoGP over there, and it's good to see the riders embracing that as well. And as we mentioned, subject to COVID restrictions, we hope to see as full a crowd as possible when we race there next month. Pol Espargaro, as I say, I think he is heading our way to speak to us perhaps later on in the show, but he's having a few stops along the way. Let's see if Andrea Dovizioso receives the same treatment. Just quickly on Pol, though, finished down in 8th position today. He's been quick right throughout this test. As we mentioned yesterday, he was fastest overall yesterday in the perhaps less grippy conditions, but his main problem today was just putting that ideal lap together. His fastest sectors were coming on all different laps. In his ideal lap, if we put his best 4 sectors together today, Pol Espargaro would have pretty much matched the time we've seen from Luca Marini. He just could not put that ideal lap together in the end and connect all 4 sectors. So clearly this circuit still does take some mastering over one lap, and we're seeing different bikes and different riders fast at different parts of the lap. So Pol Espargaro, even though he was 8th at the end of today with his teammate up in 2nd, I think we'll come away from day 2 thinking that he's in pretty good shape.
Here is Marc Marquez, then the fans, the workers, taking every opportunity they can to get up close and personal with the former king of MotoGP, trying to reclaim his throne, of course, this year. I'd imagine when we come back here for the race on March 20, it's going to be quite hard for these riders to actually manoeuvre around the paddock because, as we mentioned, they are superstars all around the world, but particularly over in Mandalika. So I think our interviews are going to start very, very shortly. We'll be crossing live over to the Mandalika circuit for the start of the reaction from day 1. It's the perfect place to start. The man who topped the timesheets on day 2. It's Luca Marini over with Jack.
Luca was just complaining to us, saying, "Oh, I have to come and do the interview with the levers on." But this is what happens when you're fastest. It's nice to be hot, I'm sure. What a great lap it was, Luca. Talk us through it. How pleased are you?
Thank you so much. Yeah, today was a really good day. We worked very well from the start of the day. The feeling of with the bike improves every lap. So we are on a good way. I hope to grow up even more and try to be more competitive also on the pace, because today I saw that Quartararo and Marquez, they were... I think that I'm there close to the other Ducatis. So maybe we can work together and try to understand in which area we need to work to improve, because this is a new track for everybody. But I'm really satisfied for these results today. It's great to be in front, and it's important to stay also in this top position also tomorrow. I don't know if we will have time for try other time attack, because we need to try some new parts also in the setting. I want to be prepared for Qatar. So we will see tomorrow how I can finish in the classification, but the lap time of today was really great.
I'm sure a result like this is a real confidence boost for you and the team, because no other rider has had to make the steps in the space of 6 months like you have, from a 2019 bike to a 2021 bike to a 2022 bike. That must have been so difficult. So to have a result like this proves that you're starting to click with it. Just talk us through that journey.
Yeah, exactly. It's not so difficult to achieve these results with everything at the top, like all the other riders, because now every rider has an official bike. There are 24 fantastic bikes in the track, so I think that more or less every bike is on the same level, so the rider needs to do something more, something really at 100% in all areas to be the strongest, and it would be not easy during the season for everybody. It was a tough season, last season, so I hope to start well and keep and stay competitive during all the season, because I want